Leyte, Philippines. If you're new to the channel, I am Brandon.
I'm Arlene.
And this is our little vlog. So before I get to the 5 reasons why I decided to go to the Philippines to find my wife, I'm going to tell you a quick little story about my experiences.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Matthew and Kharlene channel. Today, we're going over a couple of reasons why it's a better idea for you to date and marry someone from overseas than try to invest in the local Western dating market. So, let's get into it.
My workplace, which really led me to overseas to begin with. I hired into this company. It's a big Fortune 500 company. When I was 18 years old, I skipped college. I didn't take on any college debt or anything like that. And I got very lucky. One of the things that I noticed when I was at work, and I was just an 18-year-old, and the average age at the company at the time was like 50 to 55 years old. And one of the things that kept coming up over and over again was these men would always come up to me and say, "Brandon, whatever you do, never get married." And I can't tell you how many men have told me this in my life, just from the workplace alone. These guys would tell me these horror stories about divorces and how they got cleaned out. Some guys would tell me the stories about how they work overtime, an excessive amount of overtime, just so they don't have to spend time with their wives. There's other guys that tell me they will not retire or quit, and these guys are like,
Sir, I 100% completely agree and relate to what it is you're saying, bro. Completely 100% agree to it. Not just because I heard about it from other men like you have at work, but I also experienced it too. I mean, honestly, I had friends and coworkers who told me, "Matthew, you don't know what stress is until you marry someone, until you're officially married." I'm like, wait, what? And I've also seen men who I knew for a long time, who I shared a room with, who I would consider to be my brothers. After they got married, I would see how they would develop a completely overnight personality swap in order to try to make their wife happy. I'm like, okay, that's not healthy at all. It really is not. I see men marry women from overseas, and I started dating women from overseas, and honestly, I'm just like, it's just so much better. It's a lot happier. Like, there's a lot to be said for a dating market where everything is not 100% against men. Where you don't have to feel ashamed for being born a man. Where you don't have to feel like you're walking on eggshells. There's a lot to be said for that.
like some of these guys are like, 75 years old, and I say, Bob, why aren't you going to retire? And he says, "Brandon, if I retire, my wife gets half of my pension. I do not want her to get $1, so I'm going to work until she passes away before me." These are real stories from real guys. I totally understand where these guys are coming from, and some of what they had to say is extremely true, which is, the marriage laws in the U.S. are, in my opinion, completely against men. And that's why I believe so many men give this advice, and I think it is, in general, very good advice. I mean, I think everybody needs to be extremely careful. It's just a sad part of where Western relationships are today. But there's good news. There are some other guys. And the one thing they all had in common is they had wives from other countries. So yeah, these guys' wives were from South America, Asia, just basically anywhere. They weren't American. And they seemed a lot happier to me. They never complained about their wives while we were at work and all this stuff. They seemed happier and a lot more relaxed. And so that piqued my interest, especially because at that point in time, I had already decided that eventually I want to move overseas. And so when 2020 happened, I had a lot of downtime. I started an online account for the very first time. Shortly after, I met Arlene, who is now my wife. I am just so thankful to all you guys at work that probably saved me from a lot of headaches and disasters in the West. Let's jump into it. Reason number 1, better dating options. So in the West, I'm just average guy, at best. Dating options in the West are, quite limited with, being 37 years old. I don't have my six-pack abs, and I am already balding. So, but by coming overseas, being 6 feet tall, you like it? You like the bigger guys?
Seriously.
So being 6 feet tall here, having white skin, it's kind of like the
pointed nose.
Yeah, the pointed nose is a big thing here.
Different color of eyes.
Yeah.
It attracts us.
Yeah, so it's
because that's what we don't have.
Yeah, so like opposites attract anywhere, right? If I dated in the West, basically, my options are women that are like, 35 to 40, and most of them at that age are typically divorced. They have children, and they have significant debts, and all those things I'm personally against. These are, as a male, I get.
Bro, completely agree with you and your wife on this also. Completely agree. I'll be honest with you. I don't like being treated like an ATM. I don't. All those baggages, like, hey, I don't want to deal with it. You're a full-grown adult woman. Your problems are your problems. They are not the problems of men that don't have any legal obligations to you at all whatsoever. However, here in the West, because of feminism, the feminist movement, a lot of Western women don't seem to really be willing to accept that. They don't. A lot of Western women just don't want to accept it. Now, as for what your wife said about how being attracted to the big nose, yep, that was me too when I started dating women from overseas. Yep, Philippines, big pointy nose. I don't know why, they just like the big noses. And yeah, when you date women from overseas, like I said before, it's like you're a kid in a candy shop. There's just like so many better options for you to choose from. You literally have your pick of the litter. You do. So what are you waiting for, guys? What are you waiting for?
To choose who my wife is, and as a female you get to choose who you accept as your husband. But for me, those were no-goes. I did not want a wife that had already been divorced. I didn't want a wife that has children, and I did not want a wife that has any amount of debt. And that's actually quite hard to come by in the West right now, for somebody around 40 years old. My second reason for going overseas is because traditional values. So here overseas in the Philippines, the gender roles are very clear and understood. There's not really a big debate on them. Also, they prioritize family and like raising your children. Instead of in the West, it's very common for both people to be working, and then you just drop your kids off at daycare. I understand that's, you kind of have to in some situations, but that's just not what I wanted. I wanted, myself and my wife to be able to raise a child, hopefully if we're able to have one. I just don't see any reason to get married, have children, and then just drop them off and have somebody else raise them. That's just not something that I was into and not something that I wanted. And so it's much easier for what I was looking for to find it overseas. All right, guys, so the third reason why is because the women here are naturally more feminine. That doesn't mean that like there are pushovers or anything like that. That's not true at all. Anybody who tells you that's lying. She's not just going to do anything I tell her to do. She's not some kind of like slave or something like that. Contrary to belief on some of your comments. Yeah. So we always talk about things, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to make, a final decision, and typically, that's the man's job, basically. There's nothing wrong with feminist or anything like that. If you're one watching, congratulations, but I would never marry you. And yeah, I mean, listen, there are some men who genuinely like and want a more feminist type of woman, but that's a very, very small percentage. Maybe like 20% of men prefer that, but the other 80%, I believe, genuinely want a feminine woman. And I believe that's why there's such a high divorce rate, which is over like 50. Everybody knows it's over 50% or something. And I think it's because we have mismatches. I mean, nobody talks to us about these things unless you do research yourself and you read books and you look at the data yourself and you start to see these patterns. And I believe that's one of the main issues with Western society right now. And I know you guys agree with me on that. Tell me some stories down below. I know a lot of you are divorced. So.
Well, you want to hear a story, bro? I won't tell you whole stories, but before I started dating women from overseas, when I was actively trying to date women here in the West, as a result of the feminist movement, I keep hitting this constant cycle with the women I would date here in the West as a result of the feminist movement, where at first they seemed great. When we first started, they seemed great. But then eventually they reveal their true colors. And I mean really reveal it. Like, they start being overly vindictive, self-absorbed, never taking any responsibilities for anything they do. They just throw all the responsibilities onto the man. They reveal that the only loyalty they show is to themselves, not to anyone else. And the list goes on and on. And honestly, I just chose to walk away from that. I just chose to do that. Just walk away. Not even pay, and I didn't even look back.
Please share. Let the rest of the fellas know what's going on in the West. Reason number 4 is that the women here are naturally more frugal.
Well, that's all we got time for today, everybody. If you like this content, by all means, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment, look us up on Patreon. It really helps us out. It really does. Peace out, guys. And for all you men out there, hey, we know things are tough. We know they are. Hang in there. There are much better options overseas for you. That's the main reason why me and Kharlene started this channel. Hang in there, everybody. Hang in there, you guys. Peace out.